Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about He Who Must Not Be Named 3 Times. That's right, we're going to be talking about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, the sequel to Beetlejuice. Oh, shit!
Oh, no! What have you done? Now our podcast is going to be completely taken over by demonic presence.
Yes, me. That's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the second movie in the Beetlejuice franchise. And just by the naming convention alone, they have to do a third one now, right? I mean, they've set themselves up. They have to. We're going to also do an On the Horizon segment. We're going to talk about what's coming up. And we've got some news stories for the first time in a while. We've mostly been just doing trailers recently, but we've got a few news stories to cover this week. And quite a number of trailers. I think we've recently just been doing maybe like 4 trailers here or there. And this week we've got 6. So we've got quite a bit of stuff before getting into Beetlejuice. So let's jump right in to On the Horizon.
On the horizon.
On the Horizon is where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so, and we're going to start things off with Dexter Original Sin. This is the prequel series, and it's coming on Sunday, December 15th to Showtime, the channel that nobody should really bother having anymore.
No, unfortunately, Showtime just hasn't been able to make a go of original programming.
Yeah, they've had a few good things, and they're just kind of not really keeping an identity in the way that they were trying to copy HBO, and they just really haven't done that great of a job of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Next up, we've got The Simpsons. Oh, come on, all ye faithful. This is a Christmas special, and it's coming on Tuesday, December 17th to Disney+. This is a Disney Plus exclusive, so it's not airing on Fox. It's just going to be on Disney+.
Yeah, which is so weird, but okay.
We were talking before we recorded the podcast about the idea of Christmas specials and how they have them. It's a big thing in the UK, and we have Christmas-themed episodes in the States, but not really Christmas specials that often, except every so often it just like the fates align and there'll be like 4, 5, 6 Christmas specials that just come out for some random reason and then they don't air the next year. It's just like it'll just be one random year. They'll just happen to have a bunch of Christmas specials. And this seems to be one of those years because we already got a Family Guy one and we got the Simpsons one. And the next thing we're talking about is also a Christmas special, and that's a Saturday Night Live Christmas, which is coming on Wednesday, December 18th to NBC. Interestingly, that is not on a Saturday.
Yeah, interesting. I remember like Saturday Night Live having like Christmas specials before.
They've done like special episodes before. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but I'm pretty sure I remember them having done one before, a different one. But I don't remember them doing Christmas specials before specifically.
Yeah, I don't remember that, so that's a new one.
We could just be wrong though.
Yeah.
Then Beast Games is coming on Thursday, December 19th to Amazon Prime.
Worth mentioning. Nobody should watch this. Please don't watch this.
The reason I think it's interesting, not the show, just the story about the show existing, is that Mr. Beast famously did a Squid Game knockoff thing, where they recreated a bunch of the events of Squid Game.
And I watched that YouTube video.
It was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad, yes.
I like some of the Mr. Beast stuff, but whenever he tries to do like a real legit like competition type thing, it's just a mess. Like the rules don't make any sense. Like they just end up giving advantages to whoever they feel like it. It just doesn't.
He's so bad at it.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. Like it's more fun to just watch him like do like a pop-up store where like they're just giving away, TVs and shit. It's more fun to watch like that kind of stuff than it is to watch him trying to do game shows because they just don't really they're not good at sticking to any rules, and then it just doesn't really work as a game show anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is a game show along the lines of what they did with Squid Game. Some of it just looks like straight up iconography from Squid Game in this already.
They're definitely like aping off of that. You know?
Yeah, and it's a $5 million prize, and it's not a YouTube video. This is on Amazon Prime. So I think it's interesting enough to talk about. I'm not really going to watch it.
I'm not going to watch it. I don't like Mr. Beast. I don't like Mr. Beast at all. I'm not watching any Mr. Beast. Good Lord.
I do not like him in a car. I do not like him from afar.
Yeah, exactly.
Next up, we have Laid. This is coming on Thursday, December 19th to Peacock. This is a series that's got an interesting premise. It's about this girl's, all of her ex-boyfriends or people that she slept with are just dying, but not like of like some disease or something, just randomly dying in like accidents. And it's become clear that she's like the link between all of these things. And so she's going around and having to visit all of these old people that she slept with and let them know that basically they're gonna die because everybody's dying of these accidents or whatever.
It's like Final Destination meets My Name is Earl.
Or just like that general concept of what people have to do when they find out they have an STD and they have to contact all their old partners.
Right, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's obviously the basis of it.
It's like that meets Final Destination.
Yeah.
Sonic the Hedgehog 3 hits theaters on Friday, December 20th. That's with Keanu Reeves playing Shadow. And they already have the game that came out where they redubbed his audio with Keanu Reeves.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
So
apparently, like, early impressions for Sonic 3 have been fantastic. Apparently, like, there's a lot of Jim Carrey in this.
He's playing like two roles this time, I think, right?
Yeah, he's playing two. Yes, he's playing Dr. Robotnik, and then he's playing his father, Gerald Robotnik, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. I saw Gene Park on Twitter, basically Precious saying, like, this feels like a 90s Jim Carrey movie.
It's interesting because Jim Carrey's like kind of semi-retired.
Yes.
He doesn't really do that much stuff anymore.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't do much stuff anymore, but, like, apparently he loves doing these movies, and that's why he's, like, done 3 of them now. And normally he's, like, very picky about what he does.
And then lastly, Mufasa, the Lion King. This is a Lion King prequel about, Simba's father. That is coming on Friday, December 20th as well.
That was definitely a movie that we needed.
This is a prequel to the live action, in quotation marks, Lion King that recently came out. So it's not like the traditional animated. It's that like weird, almost photorealistic lions, but they talk and stuff that they did the Lion King remake with. But this is like a prequel to that, I guess. But that is our On the Horizon segment. And now we're going to move on to On Beat.
On Beat.
On Beat is our news segment, and our first news story is that Chris Evans will be returning to the MCU for Avengers Doomsday. So, yeah, no word on if he's actually playing Captain America. Famously, we know that Robert Downey Jr. is also returning for Doomsday, but not as Tony Stark.
Yes, and actually, I just got word from my inside source that we finally know why the movie is called Avengers Doomsday.
Because Chris Evans is playing Doris Day?
Yes, because this is actually going to be a crossover with DC, and Chris Evans is playing Doomsday.
Ah, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. You thought it was Doomsday because of Dr. Doom, but that was a swerve. That was misdirection.
The Snyder Bros are right. James Gunn was a plant.
Yep, and Zack Snyder is actually going to be directing instead of the Russo brothers now.
Ooh, slow motion.
Yeah, slow motion, yeah.
Our next news story is that Jeremy Allen White, who is the star of the popular series The Bear, who is also on the show Shameless, is going to be joining Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu movie. He'll be playing Jabba the Hutt's son.
I totally was watching Star Wars this whole time, all the Star Wars media, and going, when the F are we going to get a son for Jabba the Hutt?
Yeah.
Like, when the hell is that going to happen? And it's finally happening. This has got to be like such a cathartic moment for Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
Like, especially
Jabba the Bear.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. I don't know. Like, it's alright. I don't even know why this movie exists in the first place. It's like
Pascal's the hotness.
Yes, he is. It's like, I enjoyed The Mandalorian series enough. I thought season 3 was like pretty weak. I just thought they would do a season 4, but apparently they think, let's do a feature film. Okay. And I don't know, like.
We made a Star Wars TV show that people actually really liked. We ruined a Star Wars TV show that people actually liked.
Yes.
Now it's time to do a movie.
Now it's time to do a movie. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, cool for Jeremy Allen White. Happy for him.
Warhammer 40K TV series is in development at Amazon. If you're feeling like this is deja vu, we knew this was kind of roughly being developed, but I guess like the rights are all ironed out now, and it's like
there was
ahead.
like a real moment like there where it seemed like this was going to go ahead.
Yeah,
and
there's some disputes between like the rights owners and Amazon about creative directions and stuff, but it looks like it's going ahead now. It's going through. So yeah, good news specifically for the Cavalry.
Yeah, for the Cavalry. Yeah, the Cavalry.
Good news for him. He's hasn't had the greatest luck recently. So
now, like Marvel just needs to follow Deadpool's lead and give Cavill the bag. Give Cavill a role in the MCU. Come on.
Yeah.
Kang Feige, what are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, they kind of did a weird take on MJ with Zendaya. What if he plays the MJ that we're more familiar with? He could just wear a red wig.
Right? Yeah, he can just do that. They could CGI out his mustache again.
Yes, of course. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
People don't realize, because Henry Cavill doesn't have a mustache that often in roles, they don't realize that he always has a mustache. It's always CG'd out.
It's always there. It's always been there.
Yeah, they just CG it out in all of them. Just some movies have done a worse job than others with it. Most of the time you don't notice. I mean, you didn't notice in The Witcher, he had a mustache the whole time. He actually had one of those total like twirled ends ones and everything.
Yeah, twirling. He was twirling it
really
too.
good CG work. I mean, that's why The Witcher had some spotty CG in other areas. They just blew all their CG budget on getting rid of his mustache.
Exactly.
Our next news story is that Sony's Spider-Man universe. This doesn't mean the Spider-Man movies themselves, but the series of movies they've done with Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. So famously, of course, the Venom movies, Madam Web, It's Morbin Time, Morbius, and they have Kraven the Hunter is coming out now. It's projected at a very, very low return. Like they're saying might do even worse than Madam Web, basically. And they're basically, what's being said now is that this is pretty much it.
This is it for like standalone weird movies based on random Spider-Man villains. Like,
it was a full-on initiative at Sony to do this, like as a project, you know.
It's this whole thing. I mean, first off, you can make this work, just not in the way Sony did it. I think the problem was like just Sony like just turning out bottom rung like generic action movies. They're like CW quality in terms of like writing and shit. They're just bigger budget CW shows. And I think the issue was like the executives at Sony, like they had the rights to Spider-Man and all the Spider-Man characters. And after they made the partnership with Marvel and Disney for Spider-Man himself, they hatched this idea that they were going to mine his extended universe of characters for their own like, MCU. And the logic was, since the Spider-Man movies have always been popular, they always made bank. If we just brand anything Spider-Man, it's also going to make bank because it's Spider-Man and it's associated.
Yeah.
And I think the real unfortunate thing with this whole thing is like they actually did something smart and they started with Venom. And also another smart thing they did with Venom was like they got Tom Hardy to play Eddie Brock Venom, and
which is the only good thing about the Venom movies.
Yeah, which is fantastic. It's fantastic casting. Tom Hardy is like a very charismatic actor. He knows how to make.
It's not even necessarily great casting. It's just you picked an actor that people are fascinated with. That you put Tom Hardy in pretty much anything, and people want to watch it. You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's good casting in the fact that Tom Hardy like knows how to make that material work.
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, that's Tom Hardy knows how to make things work. Period.
Right.
Right.
So it's a popular and also like you start off with Venom, which makes sense because when if you go like before the MCU movies came out, if you ask like the general public, like Marvel characters, Venom was always one of the top 5 or like 3 most popular Marvel characters. It was like Spider-Man, Wolverine, Venom.
Yeah.
Like he was up there.
I mean, you think about the big players in the MCU, like Iron Man and Captain America, and those were like C-tier.
Yeah, they're C-tier. Nobody gave a crap about Iron Man before that movie came out.
Yeah, the only one of the original Avengers that anybody actually really cared about was probably like the Hulk.
Yeah, the Hulk, yeah. And I think like that the show like they had in the 70s had like a lot to do with that.
Yeah, Lou Ferrigno.
The Lou Ferrigno, yeah, that was pretty popular. Yeah, so Venom was like one of the top most popular characters. They start with that, and then the Venom movie was really successful, like, of course, obviously. I think, unfortunately, like, that gave studio executives ideas that, okay, they could just do anything, and it's going to be a success as long as it's related to Spider-Man.
They showed incredibly poor judgment when it comes to all this stuff, because they also thought there was genuine demand for more, like, a second release of Morbius.
They're
like, man, people are talking about Morbius. We need to strike while the iron's hot and do another release. It's like, no, people are making fun of your movie.
And this is the incompetence of executives, because the executives at Sony do not understand the material. They don't understand what makes it successful. They're just like, okay, Spider-Man's successful, Venom's successful. Okay, we could just do anything with the Spider-Man IP, and it's going to make bank. Spider-Man, that prints money. So we're going to like, okay, who do we got the rights for? Okay, Morbius, yeah, F it, do it. Get Jared Leto. Like, that's going to make a mint. And it's like, no, nobody gives a shit about Morbius. Morbius was never, even if you limited, the popularity poll to just Spider-Man comic books and just characters associated with Spider-Man, Morbius wasn't even in the top 20.
The only time anybody cared about Morbius was at the end of the third Blade movie.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Or when he showed up in, like, the Spider-Man cartoon from the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, for the 90s. Nobody ever gave a crap about Morbius. Like, come on. If you were going to do a Morbius movie, you had to make sure, like, it was, like, a damn good movie. You had to, like, make people care. Mm-hmm. Like Marvel did with Guardians of the Galaxy. Because on the face of it, like, Guardians of the Galaxy just sounds stupid. Like, there's a tree and there's a talking raccoon. But James Gunn did such a beautiful job with that movie that people cared.
Yeah.
You had to do that for Morbius, and they didn't. They just put out this, like, lazy, pseudo-horror, sci-fi, generic action film and just thought that was going to be good enough. And then they did the same thing with Madam Web. Like, who the F is Madam Web? Yeah. Okay, are you gonna make us care? No, you're not. You're just gonna make a trash movie and, like, just think advertising it as Spider-Man is gonna make people watch it.
Madam Web is particularly bad because the strength of Madam Web is kind of as a mysterious character.
Yes.
And when you make a mysterious character the protagonist of a movie, you've demystified that character.
Yeah, you've completely demystified
You've, like, ruined everything that was interesting about Madam Web is ruined by making Madam Web the center of a project.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then, like, now you got this, like, goofy Kraven movie that, like, completely reinvents the character as an anti-hero for, because he has to be the protagonist of the movie, I guess.
I've heard people counter the whole, like, Sony's, how much they screwed up the Marvel stuff that they have licensed to. And then people will argue against that and say, like, oh yeah, well, what about the Sam Raimi movies? And what about the Spider-Verse movies? And it's like, yeah, the Sam Raimi movies were Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
That's what made those work, not Sony.
Sony made it work by hiring Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
And like letting
and the
him.
Spider-Verse movies, that's what's his name? What's that duo's name? They also did, like, the Lego movie. And
you do have to give the studio credit for hiring the right directors and approving the right scripts. And,
those
like,
times.
Saying out, those times. Yeah, for those that you do have
none
to
of their other enterprises.
No. And I mean, I don't get, like, the point there. It's like, yes, those were the times when Sony made good movies.
I think
that's what they had to do here.
Oh, it's Lord and Miller for the Spider-Verse movies. I couldn't remember.
It's like, yes, that's when they made good movies. That's what they should have been doing here, but they didn't make good movies here.
They also kind of lucked into it, because, like, when they made the first Spider-Man movie, Sam Raimi was kind of a cult director. Nobody really knew him outside of his, like, loyal fan base. And so you got, like, a really good director on the cheap.
Yeah, he was somebody that they could hire for cheap. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and the same thing with Lord and Miller. Like, they did the Spider-Verse movies right as Lord and Miller were breaking out. They just, like, they lucked out on that, because that project took so long to develop that they had hired them way before anybody knew who Lord and Miller were, They were having maybe a little bit of success with, like, the 21 Jump Street remake and stuff like that, but nobody really knew them as, like, named figures at that point. And it wasn't until, they did that, and then, like, that's kind of was their biggest breakout thing, but that's the talent.
That's the talent.
Sony, that's Lord Miller.
Oh, and that's Lord Miller. I think it's just like the happenstances, they managed both in Raimi and Lord Miller to hire people who had, like, genuine passion for the projects. Like, Sam Raimi was a huge fan of, like, 1960s Marvel comics, especially Spider-Man, and that's what he modeled his film after, his films after. That's what he wanted to do.
Yep. So yeah, Sony's Spider-Verse coming to an end. The Arrowverse already came to an end.
Yeah.
It's an end of an era.
The DCEU is at an end. It's just been reborn as the DCU just recently.
The changing of the guard.
Only the MCU persists.
And the MCU's going through a slightly new direction now. Like they're starting to the signs are starting to show up of them closing out the multiverse saga, which wasn't their best chapter.
Right. Yeah. It's going to end with the next two Avengers films.
And then they're going to move on to, it looks like they're moving on to like the mutant saga. So next thing.
Yeah. They're going to lean heavily into X-Men, coming up soon enough.
So yeah, it's an interesting time. That doesn't mean good necessarily, just interesting time for all the comic book adaptations right now. A lot of change.
It was mentioned in this time. Sony's not giving up on Spider-Man. They're just leaning in. They're going to lean more into the next Tom Holland film and the next Spider-Verse film instead of trying to do more of these standalone villain films.
Yeah. The Spider-Man stuff is still absolutely massive. I mean, No Way Home is one of the highest grossing of all of the Marvel movies. It's the only ones that really compete with it amongst the MCU movies, which MCU is huge, are the Avengers movies and Black Panther.
Yeah.
Everything else, No Way Home just absolutely cooked. So yeah, of course. And the Spider-Verse movies are both critical darlings and successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then our last news story before we move on to trailers is that Mike Flanagan is writing a Clayface feature film for DC.
That's going to be interesting, because there's a lot you could do with that character, especially if somebody as talented as Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, talking again about talent, getting the right people involved.
Mike
Flanagan
exactly.
is the perfect example of that.
If this was I don't know, the guys who made Epic Movie are writing a Clayface movie for DC, I'd be like, that's horrible.
You'd be like, James Gunn, are you okay?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but no, this is somebody immensely talented, and apparently, according to Variety, Mike Flanagan originally pitched this a while back. It's a project he's been wanting to do. So again, it's a passion project of his. It doesn't sound like he's going to be directing it due to his busy schedule, but he is writing the script, apparently.
He's a writer-director, but his talent leans more towards the writer side.
Yeah.
It's you look at somebody like Quentin Tarantino, who's a writer-director, and he's kind of equally talented in both, he's kind of for both. Same thing kind of goes with James Gunn, although James Gunn might lean a little bit more on the writer side. Mike Flanagan, I think, leans a bit more heavily on the writer side.
Right.
Even though, so, yeah, I mean, you're getting the best of him from the writing, so.
Yeah, so this
news.
should be,
should be Elseworlds, right? I assume.
I don't know. We don't know yet if it's going to take place in DCU proper or if it's going to be Elseworlds. I'm kind of high on this because the DC stuff has been good recently, with the Batman and the Penguin, which we just talked about
the
in
new
this
Joker
podcast.
movie, I guess. Joker 2.
Not as
great.
Depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
It wasn't
People
great.
who hate comic book movies seem to like it.
Yeah, apparently John Waters and Hideo Kojima really enjoyed Joker.
Yeah, and a few other people that, like I said, that hate comic book
Quentin
movies.
Tarantino also said Joker 2 was brilliant.
Yeah.
Really divisive. I haven't seen it, but Penguin has been fantastic. Peacemaker's been fantastic. The recent Batman movie's been fantastic.
Have you checked out Creature Commandos yet?
Not yet. I'm going to start this week for sure.
Seen the first 2 episodes of that. Also fantastic.
Nice. Good to hear. So for me, they're kind of on a hot streak. And again, this is Mike Flanagan writing. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I am bullish.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to move on to the trailers. Our first trailer up is American Primeval. Now, I already mentioned to you, and I stand by it, I think this looks like kind of what Kevin Costner was going for with his Horizon movies that flopped really badly, except this looks a lot better.
Well, yeah, this looks watchable. I'm sorry,
this looks like a new wave, critically acclaimed Western, but doing the kind of story that Costner wanted to do with Horizon.
It's funny because I don't know anything about Horizon. I haven't even watched a trailer. I know it's a Western.
I watched it. It's very weird.
I know it's a Western. I know it was written and directed by Kevin Costner. It stars Kevin Costner. I know it bombed and people don't like it.
Think about it as it's about the push into the West and the fights between Native Americans and settlers.
I don't actually care what it's about.
Well, I'm just saying because that's basically what this is too.
Right.
If you saw the trailer for this, it's the same story basically.
My point where I'm going is, like, I've seen Kevin Costner epics, and they all manage to be incredibly boring. Like, have you seen The Postman?
No, I did not watch The Postman. But I did watch Dances with Wolves. That's a classic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's the one, like, he is, like, most, like, well regarded for. But then you watch something like The Postman, or you watch, like, Waterworld, and you're like...
Waterworld is a masterpiece. What are you saying?
Yeah. And
Get
like,
Waterworld's name out of your fucking mouth.
Wow, I hit a nerve.
Anything that could spawn that great of a stunt show at Universal Studios.
Or that great of a Virtual Boy game.
There you go. It's the
It's
second best movie that Dennis Hopper was in following Super Mario Brothers.
Yes. Or Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
That's the unofficial Dennis Hopper trilogy.
Yes, those are like the 3 best Dennis Hopper movies.
And then they made a video game adaptation of that trilogy, and it was called Deadly Creatures.
Yes.
On the Wii. But yeah, my point though is that Horizon was going for this very specific type of Western story.
Right.
And it was just kind of a mess. It was really plotting. Like, it was kind of trying to focus on character, and it didn't really work.
Right. And my point is, because it's a Kevin Costner project, and that's what Kevin Costner projects do.
But American Primeval, it's not just that it's also a Western, but it's like basically the exact same story. It's about the movement to the West. So it's not just about, like, outlaws, and gangs taking over small towns or blah, 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 whatever, like, type of Westerns we normally see. It's specifically about that kind of caravanning into the West kind of story.
Yeah.
It's like the Oregon Trail kind of thing, It's like that kind of story. And this just looks a lot better. Look way, way better.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the next trailer we're going to be talking about is The Gorge. This is an interesting movie. The only movie that I thought about when I watched this trailer is a movie I haven't seen that looks really bad, but it's not that this looks bad, it's just for some reason it reminded me of that Matt Damon movie about the Great Wall of China.
No, okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know.
They did that, like, Chinese epic that just had Matt Damon in it for some reason, and it was about, like, they built the Great Wall of China to hold out monsters, but for some reason Matt Damon was in it.
I don't know this movie at all. I'm gonna have to look this up.
That's what this made me think of. Just because of the idea of, like, you have this kind of Cold War thing going on, and you have 2 different sides, and they're on the opposite sides of this gorge, and they kind of think they're there to, like, keep an eye on the other side, and they're really there because there's, like, monsters down below.
Basically said it was the Hellmouth.
Yeah, they said there's, like, a fracture to hell or something there, and they end up kind of communicating with each other long distance, and then they kind of are building this flirtation and this relationship, and then the monsters start coming out and things start happening, and that's what it's about.
Yes.
It looks interesting. It looks like a cool concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good cast, cool concept, and it doesn't have Matt Damon in a Chinese setting, ancient Chinese setting. So that's already a point in its favor as well. Next up, we got a trailer for season 3 of Invincible. We'd had like a teaser before. There was basically footage that's probably not even in the show, or if it is in the show, it was like dubbed differently because it was done entirely like tongue-in-cheek. And this time we got an actual trailer. And you have kind of Invincible kind of taking a slightly darker role where he's starting to become a little bit more rebellious. You see him, he gets a new suit at the end of the trailer. He's fighting with Cecil where he's kind of standing up against him more. And it's kind of focusing on him becoming this like much stronger figure.
Yeah.
Going from this intrepid, young junior hero to somebody that's like Earth's strongest,
Right, yeah. He's maturing.
He's going from Superboy to Superman.
And it looks like Cecil's like becoming more ruthless.
Yeah. So it looks good. I'm excited for season 3. They made a big deal that they're not splitting the season this time because certain people, Will Rohrig, really had a problem with the split season.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that you're entirely responsible for them not doing a split season this time.
You're
the only reason.
Glad I could be of service.
But yeah, it looks good. Speaking of animated shows, we've got Castlevania Nocturne Season 2. So, Castlevania Nocturne, I was kind of a little bit mixed on. I don't know, we talked about it, but I don't remember exactly how you felt about it.
I thought it was awesome.
I was a little bit mixed on it until the end. Everything kind of started coming together more at the end. And a lot of that was, you bring Alucard back and you got my attention.
Yeah, but that's all you needed.
What I like about this is that we only got like one line of dialogue and like a short clip, couple seconds of Alucard in the last season. And
well, you just just showed up at the end.
Yeah, and just said like one line, and that was it.
Yeah, it was
you
a
know?
stinger, yeah.
Yeah. And here, he's actually like part of this trailer, but he's like a very different Alucard than he was in like the past series. He's like a world-wearied Alucard. Like somebody that's kind of, you can tell he's been around for a couple hundred years now.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Well, he is much older.
Yeah. So I thought that was really cool. Like, I like the idea that they're portraying him very differently. I think that's kind of my main takeaway from the trailer. I also like that they're moving away from that.
Was
the
awesome.
worst part of the first season of Castlevania Nocturne was the kind of like losing his powers bit, and they kind of have moved past that now, so that's cool too.
I thought it was awesome. We get to see like Juiced a lot more in this trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Like more Juiced is awesome. Yeah, we get to see more Alucard. I really love the line. It was like, are all Belmonts like this? And he says, irritating? Oh yes.
It's nice to see Alucard looking back, even on his problems with Belmonts in the original series, and almost looking back kind of nostalgically about it.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
kind of a fun way to portray that, so I like that. Next, we got a trailer for Old Guy, which it feels like it's in the vein of like Nobody, or like all these kind of movies that are taking kind of the John Wick formula, but then going, well, how do we play with it this way? And, this time it's going to be about an old guy or something like that, but it's a little bit different. Because what it's doing is it's setting up the idea, very similar to Nobody, of somebody that's kind of, older that's involved in this, but it's somebody that's basically being forced to go from being like an active hitman or something into like training kind of his replacement.
So they're like, okay, we've decided we're going younger. And now he's got to like train somebody younger to replace him.
And then it just goes from that into like a generational warfare kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's got Lucy Liu. It looks fun. Christoph Waltz is the lead. He's fantastic. It's got Lucy Liu. The other guy, I don't know. I guess he might be a newcomer, but it's like, yeah, it looks good. Looks good.
Yeah, it's almost invoking, like, have you ever seen Red, the movie Red with Bruce Willis?
Yes.
It's kind of invoking a little bit of that too, which was like an interesting concept at the time of like, retired, like paramilitary figures or something, being put back into service and then having to kind of go against the system. So it's kind of got a little bit of that going on too. And I don't know. I think it looks like it's going to be a fun time.
Oh yeah. It's going to be a great time.
And then lastly, we got what is maybe not the best of all the stuff that was in the trailers we watched, but what I think had the best trailer of all the trailers we watched, which was for 28 Years Later. This was a fantastic trailer. It's almost like a piece of art in itself, just the trailer.
Oh yeah. Cillian Murphy killed it in this trailer, let me tell you.
I love the use of this poem through the trailer. That's like this old ass recording of this poem, and they're using that instead of like using that in conjunction with music to kind of like set the tone. But it's just it really works.
Absolutely.
I've seen 28 Days Later. I haven't seen 28 Weeks Later, so I don't know if I'm gonna see 28 Years Later. But I liked the trailer as a trailer. I think it was fantastic.
Yeah, it looks good.
That is it for our On Beat section, and now we're gonna move on to full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we are summoning the demon. We are summoning the demon Beetlejuice by talking about his movie, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. There, I've done it.
There, you've done it.
Again.
You've done. Yeah, again. So
I saw this movie a while ago when it came to theaters, and I told
of course,
you...
you always watch stuff in theaters.
Flexing my privilege.
Yes.
But what I told you about it is how I feel about it is that this is not as good as Beetlejuice. It just isn't.
No, it's not.
But it's a perfectly fun movie that gets the character right.
I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed it. Yeah, it's not the instant classic the first one is. It's not like as tightly like plotted or anything as that. But this is a real fun movie, and I think like a lot of my enjoyment came down to like the movie just surprised me. It's its own movie. It doesn't try to like replay the greatest hits from the 80s, right? It's like it doesn't fall into a trap that so many of these sequels do, which is like a series of member berries, like, oh, remember this joke, or remember when we did this? and then like repeating it. It does its own thing. It has its own repertoire of jokes, of gags, of stuff. There are some callbacks, but they're done like very well, I think.
Also, I think part of what made Beetlejuice work so well as a movie, like the original, was that he's not in it that much.
Right,
like, the character of Beetlejuice is not in the movie all that much. Like, it's a very brief role, and every moment he's on screen is like electric. And that's a big part of what made Beetlejuice work.
Because the idea in like the original Beetlejuice was because he was like a force. He was a presence, and like when he's there, like, shit goes down. And so like if he's there for most of the runtime, that means like bad shit would be happening for like the entire runtime of the film. It's like, it was kind of like the whole idea was like when you say his name and summon him and he shows up, like that's when like everything hits the fan.
It's unpredictable, it's uncontrollable, it's like a hurricane coming at you,
Right, yeah, exactly.
And I think the thing that Beetlejuice did exceptionally well is that they stuck to that. I think there would be a lot of temptation to go like, oh, okay, well now that we're doing the second one, let's just make it entirely focused on Beetlejuice.
Right. No, and they kept it focused on the family,
Yeah.
On the Deets, family.
And by doing that, you have like Beetlejuice will just kind of disappear for a while. And then when he pops up again, you're like, oh shit, yeah, like things start happening and it gets really exciting.
Was also a much heavier focus on the afterlife itself in this movie than like what you saw in like the original,
like the bureaucratical structure of it and stuff.
The bureaucratical structure, like also like the various like different inhabitants of it. You got like Willem Dafoe's character, who's like a dead actor, like an action hero.
He's like a cop show actor or something who's like overly invested in his role.
Or who's now like a, an afterlife cop,
Yeah.
Or like, or like you had Danny DeVito making a cameo as like an afterlife janitor.
That was great.
Yes,
did you know that was coming, or did you just get to experience that? Yeah.
I got to experience it. I didn't even know Danny DeVito was in this movie before watching it, and then you have Beetlejuice actually got a backstory in this movie, like an origin story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Monica Bellucci's character comes in. Beetlejuice's ex-wife who murdered him with poison, and then before Beetlejuice died from being poisoned, he chopped her up with an axe.
And she's kind of like another force of nature, kind of, coming through this movie. So it's kind of there's like two wild, loose hurricanes moving around through the course of this movie. And then the story itself is mainly focusing on the Dietz family. We find out that Charles Dietz has passed away. This is interesting too, because I don't know if you know about Jeffrey Jones.
I know all about Jeffrey Jones.
We're not going to get into the details of that, but let's just say that he was not a desirable person to have in a movie.
No.
At this time.
But also, like, and here's the thing. This could have been a very simple, yes, we're writing Jeffrey Jones out of the movie for obvious reasons. He will not be coming back. That would have been the easy thing to do. But instead of doing that, they made it the central thing that the entire plot pivots on.
Yeah, and they didn't disrespect the character, too, because the character isn't a bad guy. The actor.
No.
So they didn't disrespect the character, which
it was interesting because they had Delia was like telling Lydia about like her father's death. They did like this claymation animated segment with Charles Dietz, and it was like a claymation Jeffrey Jones, He's not in the movie, but there's like a claymation like version of him in the movie. I was like, oh, okay. And and then his whole thing is like he gets into a plane crash in the ocean and then gets eaten by a shark. Like that's how he dies.
Yeah, and so he's not just like gone when he's dead, because this is a movie about the afterlife.
Right,
so,
yeah.
So he's a character that you see
I was gonna say that. Like, I was gonna get to that because after, like, they mentioned, like, how he died and everything, like, literally, like, the scene before that, I was, like, kind of thinking to myself, oh, like, my thought, I was watching the movie, I was thinking, oh, okay, he's dead. So, I mean, that makes sense that they wrote out Jeffrey Jones. I'm like, wait, this is a movie that's constantly switching over to the afterlife and people in the afterlife. We just followed, like, this one random guy into the afterlife. It wouldn't make sense if you didn't see him.
Yeah.
Like, in the afterlife, how are they going to do that? It's like, oh, they came up with, like, a very clever way to, like, have, like, the character in the movie in the afterlife without, like, it having to be Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah, or somebody imitating Jeffrey Jones is like, you know, like, they found a clever way around that.
Yes. By virtue, like, he has no head.
Yeah. That was, I think that was well done. They didn't put quite as much care into getting around Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, which the reason to get around that, I mean, for Alec Baldwin, maybe something else, but, for Gina Davis, the reason to get around that was less about, like, a controversy and more about just the fact that they'd aged, you know?
Yeah, like, I think, like, Gina Davis said in a recent interview, like, ghosts don't age. So it would have been really obvious.
They did address it, but kind of in a bit of a more of a throwaway kind of way. But they're not really needed. Like, you don't really feel that there's, like,
no, this isn't
in this.
No, because this isn't the Maitland story. That was the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the Maitland story. This is the Dietz story now.
Yes. So they introduced another Dietz. Yeah. Lydia's daughter, played by the stunning Jenna Ortega.
Yes. Yeah. Does a fantastic job as well.
I heard, was it Tim Burton, I think, said that they had to wait this long to do Beetlejuice because they had to wait for Jenna Ortega to be born.
That's funny. And another thing we found out is, like, Astrid is Lydia's daughter, and she's also the daughter of another character who has passed away, who we didn't meet, who is Richard, no last name. But Lydia is currently seeing a man named Rory, played by Justin Theroux, who is a producer of Lydia's supernatural, like, talk show, I guess, where she, like, investigates ghosts.
She's like a medium, kind of.
Yeah, she's like a medium
host.
Yeah. And Rory is a man who is her producer, her agent, and now he's trying to marry her. And she doesn't seem like all that enthusiastic about marrying him, but he kind of
He's just kind of forcing his way into the situation.
He's like browbeating her into it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and to where she's reluctantly just accepted it.
Yeah, just kind of like exhausting her into submission.
Yes.
Which is I think Justin Theroux does a good job in playing a character that's just so annoying and hateable and just ever present, you know?
Very slimy character. And meanwhile, like, Lydia is seeing Beetlejuice, you know? She's seeing like
visions of him, yeah.
Visions of him. And we find out, like, pretty soon, like, the first scene that we see of, like, Beetlejuice in this, we find out that's not a coincidence. That's not her. Like, Beetlejuice is, like, deliberately projecting himself to her.
Mm-hmm. he's deliberately haunting her.
Yes. Because he is trying to, like, find a way back to reignite that wedding from the 80s.
Yes. We got a side story where Astrid runs into a boy. She's talking to him and communicating with him because she hates really her mom and just wants to be.
This isn't really a side story because this is how, like, the entire plot moves forward.
Yeah,
this is how we get, like, Beetlejuice,
it is
like,
kind of a side story. What's cool is that it's set up as it's not a side story, but it quickly becomes a side story because Beetlejuice is a force.
Yes.
Because Beetlejuice just basically goes like, yeah, that story's over.
Oh, yeah, they do that, yeah. It's literally like a narrative tool to get to have an excuse to get Beetlejuice into the action fully, because, like, there has to be a reason why anybody would, like, summon Beetlejuice, you know, and so far there isn't. Rory does it in a scene earlier, which we get this fantastic scene where Beetlejuice, like, mimes, like, a couples therapist. He, like, freaks out Rory, you know?
Let's spill our guts.
Let's spill our guts, first. Yeah. But Lydia, you know, manages to expel him again and, you know, keep him contained. And so there has to be a reason why somebody would release Beetlejuice again for the plot to move forward. And this side story turns out to be that reason.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, like you said, it is kind of set up as like a primary plot point and stuff, but then it just very quickly ends. Like, this kid almost, you know, gets away with his scheme. What we find out is that he's dead. He's a murderer, and he's gonna, like, steal Astrid's life force to, like, go back to life while she'd have to take his place.
Yeah, exactly. He's gonna switch places with Astrid so she'd be stuck.
And just when you think this guy's actually getting away with it, just like out of nowhere, Beetlejuice just drops him into hell.
Oh yeah, well, Lydia, like, summons Beetlejuice and promises to marry him if he helps her, like, help Astrid, which he does. It's a great scene too, because, like, he's smiling, you know, like, he's at the place where he's about to get the stamp because he said, oh, you just need to get your passport stamped and you can go back to Land of the Living. And then Astrid is stuck forever in Land of the Dead. And, like, he's smirking and he gets his passport stamped and you think, oh no, then the teller looks up and it's Beetlejuice and his stamp says, like, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And then Beetlejuice pulls a lever and, like, sends him to hell.
It's
literally.
really cool because it's simultaneously a feeling of like, oh yeah, fuck that guy. Awesome. Beetlejuice kicks ass. That's great. And then also like, oh no.
Yeah, like, oh no, yeah. Because, like,
now like the real baddie's coming into play, you know?
oh yeah. Because now, like, Lydia has to hold her end of the bargain.
Yeah. Because they do the interesting trick by, you know, he takes Lydia into the afterworld to kind of solve it, and then he just kind of disappears. He just kind of takes off.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, what's going on? And you kind of almost forget about him. And then when he shows up and does that, it's like, oh shit, he's still there. He's on top of it. He actually fulfilled his end, and now we're moving on to that next step.
Yeah, which is like the climax of the film in the church. We're like, first of all, Beetlejuice dispatches of Rory with like a truth serum, gets Rory to like reveal like all his real intentions towards Lydia, which none of them were good. He was just taking advantage of her and thought he could make more money off of her as her husband than as her producer. So he reveals like he was using her the whole time. And then Beetlejuice like starts the wedding, and you get this like big musical number of like MacArthur Park.
Yeah,
you know?
the Richard Harris version.
Yeah, the Richard Harris
the
version.
actor.
Yeah.
Richard Harris is the actor who played Dumbledore in the first two Harry Potter movies.
Right.
He was in Gladiator. He was the emperor that died, that Russell Crowe's character was like so fond of. This is Richard Harris, and he actually did the first version. He didn't write it, but he recorded the first version of MacArthur Park, and it's this really long, kind of ridiculous, overly theatrical version of this song, and they just did the entire song as a musical number in this movie.
Yes. It's fantastic the way Michael Keaton does it, and like he summons this like big melting gooey wedding cake. You know, like it's bonkers. The whole sequence is like absolutely bonkers.
So this is a little off topic, but I have to ask because I have this experience. I really have no experience with the song MacArthur Park except the parody.
I know what you're gonna say. Yes, Jurassic Park. Yeah, that's the first time I became aware of like this song was when I heard that. Like, I still haven't I actually never actually listened to the real song, so I'm just thinking of the lyrics to Jurassic Park for this entire sequence.
Exactly. Like when I was looking back on this movie when I was putting the show notes together, I was like, oh yeah, how did the lyrics go again? I was just thinking, and I'm like, and I kept using the Jurassic Park lyrics. I kept going, MacArthur Park is so frightening in the dark.
I was like kind of listening to this and going, oh, okay, these are the lyrics to the real song, and I was like listening to it. I'm like, this is actually like a really goofy song already by itself. They're talking about like this melting cake that's melting in the rain, and like I'm never going to have that recipe again. And I'm like, this is like a really ridiculous song.
Yeah.
Like already, you know, like, yeah.
That was just a little side tangent I had to hit on this because I figured if there's anybody I talked to that probably had the exact same experience as me in that regard, it would be you. Where we know the Weird Al version and not the original, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a rarity for me, but in this case, that was true.
Yeah.
And it's a fun sequence, and then, like, you know, the rest of the plot lines come together at the end. Like, Willem Dafoe's cop character who's been hunting Beetlejuice, and Monica Bellucci's character, and now, like,
storms
Lydia...
it in grand fashion and does nothing.
He does nothing, yeah, because, like, Beetlejuice freezes him, right? And then Monica Bellucci shows up as Beetlejuice's ex-wife.
And then she and Rory get taken out with the sandworm.
Yep, Lydia and Astrid summon the sandworm, and they take her and Rory out. Beetlejuice actually manages to dodge the sandworm, so they don't get Beetlejuice with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like Beetlejuice has won. He's dispatched all of his opponents. It looks like there's nobody who's gonna rush in and stop him now. And then, like, Astrid points out, according to the handbook of the recently deceased, the contract Beetlejuice made with Lydia is actually null and void. And so the contract just burns, and then, like, Lydia, like, dispatches of Beetlejuice once and for all. And then that's it.
Yeah. Then they have a kind of interesting ending. What did you think of the way they did the ending?
I thought the ending was bonkers. First of all, I should say, it's crazy because, it, like, shows Astrid. She meets this guy. They get married. Then she gives birth to an evil baby Beetlejuice. By the way, that earlier scene with the couples therapy, like, Beetlejuice had, like this evil, effed up baby Beetlejuice, like, pop out of Lydia's stomach and, like, crawl around and, like, was biting her ankles and shit.
Yeah.
And now we see it, like, back in, like, this sequence, and it's, like, even more, like, creepy and, like, scary and crap. And then we find out it's just a dream Lydia had. bed. And then she turns around like Beetlejuice is laying next to her, and then she wakes up again. It's like, oh, that was just a dream. The movie just ends there.
Now I'm going to touch on, because we've gone through the plot of the movie, I'm going to touch on something that Tim Burton decided to do that I have heavily criticized another director for making the same decision, but I like it when Tim Burton did it.
Okay.
And that is that Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is almost entirely practical.
Yes. I appreciate that they did practical effects because, like, the original movie was practical, and I think, like...
It just makes it fit together, like, seamlessly.
It makes it, like, it maintains, like, you know, visual continuity with the original, you know? Like,
yeah. So, on this podcast, I've criticized Christopher Nolan a ton for his choices with Oppenheimer and how his obsession with being practical, like, ruined several major moments in that movie, just utterly ruined them. And how I really just, I hated how obsessed he was with sticking with practical. Like, I think I like practical effects, but when you use it to the detriment of anything else, it's like frustrating. And here you have an example of, if this wasn't like a campy, weird movie that Beetlejuice is, like, some of these practical effects would be too goofy and you'd be like, oh, why is he doing that and stuff? But it is like a campy, weird movie. And so it all works. You know, it works beautifully. It's all about tone, you know, and it just works in this movie in particular. So I'm really happy that he chose to go in that direction. It feels kind of like Tim Burton has recently been like a little bit revitalized. He's had kind of a downturn in his career recently. And it seems like he's kind of broken out of that.
Yeah, it seems like kind of broken out of it. I do want to say, and one thing like I actually appreciated is like when the original trailers came out, I kind of criticized that they were doing like this ridiculous, somber, slow version of Deo. It wasn't clear for a trailer, but like when you watch the movie, it's actually like a pretty funny gag. It's a joke, and it's because like a children's choir singing it at Charles' funeral, you know, that Delia like set up. And of course, like it's weird and eccentric because that's what Delia is, you know, like that's the joke. It's like, yes, they're doing like this real dramatic rendition of Deo because Charles liked the song or something, and like that's Delia's idea, you know. So it's like Charles' headstone is like a glass like shark fin, you know. Like this is
she's morbid and weird, yeah.
She's weird. So it's like part of a joke that didn't come across when they had it in the initial trailer.
I love Catherine O'Hara in this movie.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I should note that like her character does die.
She was great in Beetlejuice, but she's better in this.
Her character does die midway through the film due to her own eccentricity again. Like she has like these vipers are supposed to be defanged, but they turn out they're not. They bite her. And she reunites with Charles in the afterlife. That's another thing.
Yeah, I have to say although the original Beetlejuice is a better movie than Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, I think Catherine O'Hara's performance is better in Beetlejuice Beetlejuice than it was in the original.
Yeah.
I think she's kind of come more into her own, you know, after doing stuff like Schitt's Creek and stuff. She's kind of like more developed this kind of weird eccentricity kind of style that she's become known for. And she's like,
and she makes the character like even more eccentric, even more eccentric in this film, you know, like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's like she's kind of other things she's done since the original Beetlejuice have like trained her to really truly inhabit that character in a way that she just didn't have the screen time to do in the original.
Yeah, exactly.
So I really enjoyed that. That's like a standout that I wanted to point out. This is a fun movie. And it's particularly fun because Beetlejuice is a fun movie. It's not to be taken too seriously. Even the original as a classic, it's not to be taken too seriously. And that's kind of the attitude you have to go into Beetlejuice Beetlejuice with, and it fits it, and it hits the same styling of Beetlejuice not being the center of the story, but Beetlejuice being the best parts of the movie, you know?
Oh yeah. Like I think like if you go into it, you'll absolutely enjoy it. I thought it was a good sequel.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have criticized Tim Burton for going back to the well on it and saying like, oh, now Tim Burton's in that era of his career where he's just going to remake all of his hits.
I mean, that would be a valid criticism if this was a remake of Beetlejuice, but this is very much a sequel. Like I pointed out, they're not just replaying the greatest hits here. They're genuinely trying to give these characters new material.
Also, Tim Burton just straight up shot down somebody asking about, would you do like an Edward Scissorhands sequel? And he said no.
Yeah. Well, good. I don't think
he said some things are better off on their own or something.
Well, yeah, because I think like that movie ended in the way like the way it needed to end, and there's no such thing.
Yeah.
As a sequel to that, because
it's like a fairy tale.
Yeah, as a sequel would ruin the ending.
Yeah, it's a fairy tale, and it ended, and you can't really continue. I think the only kind of thing that you could do to Edward Scissorhands is like a little side tangent off of Beetlejuice. The only thing you could do is maybe like a prequel about the inventor when he was younger or something.
Yeah, you could probably do it. But
that would be like the only thing that would make any sense at all.
But it would also be like highly unnecessary, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it might be fun if it was like maybe like an animated thing, like done in that kind of stop motion, like Nightmare Before Christmas style or something.
Right, yeah.
Might be kind of interesting. But, anything beyond that would be completely unnecessary. And so I really like that they specifically chose Beetlejuice for this, and that it's not just him replaying all of his hits, I hope this is kind of like the shot in the arm that Tim Burton needs to kind of take back his creative ambition and kind of start firing all cylinders again.
Yeah, he's been making some pretty lame movies recently, so yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. It's also interesting, one thing I'm going to bring up is that this movie was written by Miles Miller and Alfred Goh. This is the creative team that did Smallville, but they also did Wednesday. And Wednesday, half of the episodes of Wednesday were directed by Tim Burton. He was like the leading creative driver for the Wednesday series on Netflix. Like all the stylistic choices and stuff all came from like Tim Burton. So it's kind of interesting he's found like new creative partners to work with. And those creative partners worked on Smallville.
I mean, also if you looked at the credits too, Seth Grahame-Smith also had a hand in writing the screenplay, and he's also listed as like a producer on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice.
Mm-hmm.
So he was also involved in the script and production of the film. He's the guy who wrote Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, and Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Those things.
Yeah.
Apparently he's worked with Burton before. IMDb has him as the writer of the screenplay for Tim Burton's Dark Shadows remake with Johnny Depp.
I have not seen that.
No.
But I have seen the remake of the show Dark Shadows that was a TV show. I think that was like in the 90s. Because the original Dark Shadows was a radio drama. Then they did like an old TV show. And then they did like a remake of that old TV show in like the 90s.
Yes.
And I watched the one from the 90s, and I know my mom used to love like both the radio show and the old series way back when she was a kid.
And then in the early 2010s, Tim Burton made it a feature film with Johnny Depp.
Which I never got to see. I wanted to see it, but that was one of the ones where that's around when Tim Burton's career started kind of going off.
Yes.
I think
off the rails.
I think the turning point for him was like Big Fish, which a lot of people like that movie. I wasn't too fond of it, but Big Fish was kind of the point where it felt like even if you like that movie, like Tim Burton's style started to kind of dry up at that point. The specific style that he's like known for started to kind of fade away.
Yeah, it kind of started becoming like a parody of itself.
Yeah, then it just started getting really bad after that. Like Big Fish was still good. It just kind of felt like his creative juices were drying up during that movie, and then after that it was just gone. And now it feels like he's kind of, rehatched, pulled himself back out from the womb, and re-embraced his weirdness and everything that made him great in the first place. So hopefully we get more great stuff from Tim Burton in the future. Hopefully this is like just the first of a good career return.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Also worth noting that Danny Elfman returned for the score, obvious.
Fantastic.
So you get that great Beetlejuice theme again, and like new variations on it. So, but that's it for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. It looks like you walked away happy.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad I did because I was
Did it beat your
going to
expectations?
Yes. I don't know, because I don't know if I expected. I kind of like went into it without expectations. My only thing was like, I hope this is good, and it was.
Yeah. So that's Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Check it out. It's on Max, right?
Yeah, it's on Max.
So you can check it out there. But until then, thank you for listening. Next week we are going to be talking about what we do in the shadows. It's a little bittersweet because it's the final season, so it's perhaps the last time we talk about it. I mean, we do a best of the year kind of thing, so it might pop up there as well. But we're kind of going to be done with what we do in the shadows because it's the final season. It's wrapping up. Sad to see it go, but it's good to see a show not outlive its welcome, And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So stay tuned for that. But That show is still airing, by the way, but it will conclude by the time we record next week's episode.
Nice.
So until then, thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can use those same tags on Blue Sky. We're there as well. You can also check out our Facebook page. You can check out our YouTube channel. You can find all of the links to all of that stuff by going to our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you open up a container story for any of our podcast episodes, scroll down to the bottom paragraph. You'll find all of those links. They're all there. You can also subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Casts. And as I mentioned, you can check out our YouTube channel, and that has the entire backlog of the podcast, as well as our past podcasts, the weekly set, which we did 300 episodes of before we did this. Those are all there, so you can check that out as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.